And we're back with another edition of the Cosmic Crossfire. This is Gerald coming right back at you. We want to thank you so much for tuning in again and keeping in touch with us for today's program. But it wouldn't be a Cosmic Crossfire without my good friend. He is the man behind Rob McCallum Films. You gotta check out everything at robmccallumfilms.com. All of his great projects, his great stuff going on, including Boxheart, the documentary, obviously, as well, the He-Man documentary, Power of Grayskull, and so much more. In fact, the Kitty documentary as well, Origins and Evolutions, available on Amazon today. It's my good friend. It's Rob McCallum. What's going on, man?
Same thing as always, living life with a big smile on my face and digging a lot of the news that's coming out of the pop culture sphere. So it's always nice to look forward to sit down and chat with my good friend, Gerald Glassford.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I love that. Same way and same style that I do it. And I know it's so nauseating to everyone out there. So
your voice message, by the way, has got to be, I don't know if interesting is the right word. I don't know if irritating is the right word. But your voice, anybody that calls Gerald, I hope he doesn't pick up the phone just so you can try to tolerate that voice message he's left. You know what? This is a good reason for everybody out there to return his calls. You're a sponsor. You're a radio station. You want to be part of the pop culture cosmos, the PCC multiverse, the Cosmic Crossfire. Give Gerald a call back just so you can hear his voicemail. Just try to do it. I can't guarantee you'll hear it, but you might. And if you do, you won't be disappointed.
Hey, I wanted to make an original. And I think I did a good job in doing so. So
there are so many things I would love to comment on said message, but we'll save that for another day.
Yes. Well, thank you for shopping. But goes to back to my retail days. But we won't go there. But it's another beautiful day here, right here in paradise. And there's so much to talk about in pop culture. So pray tell, Rob, what's going on in your world when it comes to pop culture?
Pray tell you I will. We're going to revisit some topics and subjects that we've set up in previous episodes of the Cosmic Crossfire, which is always nice when you can have a setup and a payoff. So,
previously on the Cosmic Crossfire.
Previously on the Cosmic Crossfire, Rob and Gerald talked about the new documentary, Making Fun, the story of Funko, back in a November 2017 edition. Now, they're back to tell you their thoughts, or at least Rob is, and maybe Gerald, but probably not, so definitely Rob. Did you watch Making Fun? It recently landed on Netflix. It is, of course, the story of Funko, makers of Wacky Wobblers, and, of course, the pop culture phenomenon at nauseum now, Funko Pops.
Well, I did see a Weird Al Yankovic Funko Pop the other day, courtesy of our friends at the ESO Network. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yes, it is almost to the borderline ad nauseum when it comes to Funko Pops. But I have not yet had a chance to see the film as of yet. But yes, I've seen the trailers, gotten a little bit of background on it, and it seems like something that was inevitable about somebody actually doing something detailed with the Funko Pop community and actually the company that started it all. Yeah, it just seemed like it was a natural.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things that the lens was going to be turned onto for a little bit more depth and discussion. This was definitely not what I thought it was going to be in a lot of regards. First and foremost, when you see the synopsis on Netflix, and I didn't see it till after the fact, it gives you a little bit more breakdown of what you can expect. And that's the heavy involvement of fans and collectors of the Funko community. The synopsis reads something along the lines of, discover the story behind one of the world's biggest pop culture brands, whom they credit the fans and collectors around the world for their success. So this is easily 50-50, if not more so for collectors and Funko fans about them than it is about the company. So right away, because that split was so balanced, it was a little off-putting for me. I've seen a lot of different collection stuff, and to be honest, because we're already at the kind of saturation point with Funko and Pops, seeing these collectors and what they have and the collectability of Pops I felt poisoned. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was really off-put by it. I'm like, I don't want to collect anything. I don't feel like any of my Funko Pops are special now after seeing what some of these guys have. It's too much for me. If I was on the border before and barely roped in when they got a new license was announced or something like that, I'm definitely staying away from it. But again, the thing that threw me for a loop was it seemed to be more about the community and the collectors and the fans than the company. Now that said, the first 20 minutes of the film I think are really great, and I think the last 20 minutes of the film are really great because that's really company focused stuff about who started it, how they got started, where their big breaks came from, the inner workings of the company, including designs and Funko, how far to go with detail, and what the next chapter of the story for Funko is, which in this case is Funko Apparel and their new Funko store in Everett, Washington. So seeing some of the groundwork laid for that and the process behind the scenes as they strive to open these new things and branch out was really interesting for me. Collections and stuff are cool. I made Nintendo Quest, I did the Power Tour, He-Man, we delve into collections, but there's only so much of that I can take in with Funko and Pops in particular, because a lot of them look so similar, and that's my big downfall I have with them. I only really want the unique ones. I'm not super impressed by some of the collections. That said, there are a ton of notable celebrities in this. The filmmakers spared no expense when it came to traveling. They were in the Philippines, they were in Japan, they were all over North America. They had Alice Cooper, they had Kirk Hammett, they had Zack Ryder, they had just a ton of celebrities involved casually. They had Kevin Eastman, but the problem with some of these celebrity appearances is it didn't seemingly fit in any overall structure. We would just get kind of chapter after chapter of, okay, here's Alice Cooper talking about Pops, and here's Kirk Hammett, and here's this. And they'd only be for maybe a minute at a time. So they only spent maybe a couple hours with each of these people and boiled down what they said into a few sound bites, and that was that. And it was like, well, look who we got now, and look who else is into Pops. You don't have to convince me about the popularity of Pops. I get it. You can just show one retail wall, and I get it. You can show me the breadth of licenses you have, and I get it. Show me more about the inner workings of the company. The funny thing that occurred to me is when I was talking to Tanya about making fun, the story of Funko, I said, you wouldn't believe the current CEO's office. It's a huge room. He's got collectibles everywhere. And this one cabinet where they interviewed him for the latter half of the film, out of focus in the background, with glass cabinet, awesome lighting. I'm like, I think those are Masters of the Universe figures. And when they panned away and they did kind of B-roll of him talking with the guys from Comic Book Men, you can see all these mint on card He-Man figures. And that's when I was getting excited, because then that's something I can connect to a little bit more. And this is a collection thing that has nothing to do with Funko. So you can see that the CEO is definitely, steeped in the collecting universe and all the different things he likes to collect. He-Man just being one of them. So,
but it's not his actual products that he himself actually makes. And you'd think in his office he would actually have, basic.
Well, he does have Funko props or pieces on his desk. Like he had Battle Armor Skeletor and He-Man on his desk next to a few other things. But his office is more about the stuff that he likes to collect and he grew up with and the things that have inspired him. He, at one point, had the largest collection of vinyl Hanna-Barbera characters, vintage from back in the day, the OG stuff. So everything from Huckleberry Hound to Fred Flintstone, the Jetsons, all that stuff, Wacky Races. That's like kind of his Wacky Races. Oh, I know. I mean, they really need to come out with that as a movie or at least a TV show. Again, if there's anything that needs to be a reboot, it's that. I mean, wouldn't that perfectly fit the Teen Titans Go, Thundercats style and approach like Wacky Races? So there it is. I'm throwing out there another $1 million idea. But that's my impressions on making fun the story of Funko. I don't know if that gives you enough to kind of draw upon, Gerald, or what you were expecting. Was it even high on your list in terms of something you wanted to watch, or was it just something that you might get around to on a rainy day in the desert?
I would say in the rainy day in the desert, because if I watch it, then it might take and sap all the enjoyment out of the few Funkos I have, because I have Captain America. I also have also as well Nathan Drake and a couple others. But seeing them and the charm that they have is fine. But when you see every single store have at least some type of smattering of them, whether it's a big huge aisle devoted to it, or whether it's even the local liquor store or whatnot have a few that they want to pawn off on you, that it's just amazing to see that how far this has gone. And I was more curious to find out, to see if, okay, the Funko stages have been it's been played out already. The fad has already been out there, and there's so much that they've already covered when it concerns pop culture, celebrities, and characters that they can actually make, create, and actually distribute out there. Now they have choices whether they go ahead and they distribute a certain character into a larger extent, into a broader retail format, or do they make it just a character that maybe they'll distribute on a limited basis. That I wanted to know a little bit more about. What types of characters do they make the call on when they're going ahead and thinking about that process? Like, for instance,
and they really don't get into any of those details.
And that's something I want to know. And
I agree.
And that's something I want to know about. Like we take Weird Al Yankovic. Okay, he's a Funko Pop that we mentioned earlier in the segment. Is he a limited figure? Is he a broader reach figure? Is he a retail mass market figure? How do they make those decisions? That's what I wanted to know. And the big question I wanted to know coming out of this is, what's the future for Funko Pops as an entity? I mean, now that you've pretty much covered the broad spectrum of pop culture with so many characters already, has it played itself out? And is there anywhere else left to go when it concerns the Funko Pops themselves?
Yeah, and you would think that a documentary that focused so much on collecting would maybe get into some of the nitty gritty of that. The only thing they really talked about in terms of exclusivity and rarity was some of the Funkos that get handed out at their big Christmas event, where you'd have to go and line up and be there in person, or like with their big store opening. And probably some limited stuff that's at the store itself, though they never went into any details. They never really talked about the retail reach, the decisions, the licensing decisions, why they're trying to get what brands in the order that they're trying to get, or the difficulties in getting brands. There's discussion about how the first CEO really wanted to get the Star Wars license. And when he got it, it was a certain thing, and it was pretty crazy. And one of the designers talks about how when he was 6 years old, his grandpa said, maybe one day you can design an R2-D2. And he ends up designing an R2-D2 Funko Pop. So it came full circle for him, which was really cool to see. But it really isn't any in-depth exploration to understanding the corporatization or the mass thinking behind the collectability of it. And that would have been a little bit more interesting for me than rather just hearing how all these people like Funko Pops with their collections in the background, or what their thoughts on it was.
And that's just like I said, the future of the actual Funko Pop is uncertain because of the fact that there's, as new things in pop culture being created, yes, you can actually go ahead and distribute that, but it's only going to be a limited few because you've covered so much already. So what is the future going to be like for Funko Pops? That's what I'm more curious about at this point in time.
Well, I'm sure for a host of reasons they didn't want to do any predictions or do anything to sour anybody's enjoyment of it. But I got to tell you, like you said, you don't want to be soured. And I think that once you realize how mass-produced these things are and the vastness of people's collections, you won't feel like the things that you're buying for the reasons you like are special. I don't feel like Funko Pops are special or even touch that special place in me anymore because they're everywhere. It's nauseating. It's past the tipping point of cool, cute, and unique. And for them to do something else to get me back into it would have to be something on a limited deal on a brand that I don't even know what other brands would be left, to be honest, at this point, because almost everything is out there. So I would love to see Funko kind of start something else and see what they can do with it. Business reasons, Pops are huge for them. They would obviously want to go back after that model, but I don't know what they could do. I'm certainly interested to see where they go as a company, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm done with Pops. I've got my Dark Crystal, my Labyrinth, my DuckTales, my Darkwing Ducks, and my Ghostbusters, and that's it. I'm good.
No He-Man, no Skeletor?
My son has He-Man and Skeletor, battle armor versions of both, but that's it.
I got my name.
I didn't even buy them. That's how done I am.
I just got to get a Shepherd, and then I think I'm done.
I'm really tempted by getting a Sprocket from Fraggle Rock and maybe Uncle Traveling Matt, but even that, I was like, you know what? I don't need this. I'm good.
Like I said, I just got to get a Shepherd from Mass Effect, and I'm done.
You got to get it. You have to get it.
Well, I would like to, but it's not life-threatening.
Right. Similarly to making fun the story of Funko, the Toys That Made Us Season 2 dropped recently, and I've had a chance to consume all 4 new episodes, which cover Lego, Star Trek, Transformers, and Hello Kitty, each spending about a half hour to an hour with each property, taking you through the formation and the evolution of those toys, from back in the OG days to their current incarnations. And I got to tell you, I was pretty impressed with all 4 episodes as a whole. Did you have a chance to check out Toys That Made Us Season 2 on Netflix yet?
Just a little bit, but I want to ask your thoughts on it. I mean, I thought it was a little bit short and abbreviated on each one. I think you're getting a truncated version because when you talk about those major properties like Funko Pops, you can actually, or even more so than Funko Pops, you can actually go ahead and make something even larger than life when it concerns all 4 of those properties.
Well, you're preaching to the converted, considering season 1 of Toys That Made Us had, a half hour, 40-minute version on the He-Man Masters of the Universe brand. And of course, we've done our 95-minute documentary on it. So I get that there is a lot more to tell out there, a lot more to discuss, a lot more to investigate and explore and showcase. Of all the 4 that came out, or even if you consider all of them, of course, He-Man aside, I would have really liked to see more in-depth looks at Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Barbie. I've seen documentaries on Lego before, and I feel like I've really got my fill of it. The only thing that this Lego episode really delved into that the other ones didn't was how Ninjago and Bionicle really sustained a new branch, a new stream of revenue for Lego. They didn't really talk about Lego licensing, and I thought they would have for sure, given that seemed to revitalize interest in the brand as well, from everything from Star Wars to DC and Harry Potter. They didn't touch on it too much. The Star Trek one, I mean, it was okay. It's a really weird monster in terms of Star Trek action figures, and it wasn't until Playmates got the license with Next Generation stuff that it seemed to stabilize. I think they probably ran the course on Star Trek toys with the half-hour spot that they did. And Hello Kitty, didn't know too much about it, didn't find it all that interesting. It's never been my jam. Maybe I'm not their target audience, but I definitely learned more about the brand than I had going into it, so that's probably their chief goal. Did you learn anything about it? Were you willing to watch it? Do you understand its significance? So I check all 3 boxes for that. But Transformers was by far, out of all 8 that are out there, the best one that I thought they did. It seemed the most in-depth. It seemed the most research was there. And it seemed to be taken the most seriously, too. Instead of weird comedic tones that you see in some of the other ones, this seems to play it really straight.
Well, I'll give you that on the Star Trek action figures, and as far as, because like you said, there's only a limited amount of Star Trek toys over the years that have really been a focus. It's not even garnered anywhere the interest that some of the other properties that you've talked about. Star Trek toys, you don't really associate that as far as the whole gambit, as far as pop culture is concerned. With Star Trek, you're talking more about clothing, apparel, just you're just talking about other things when you're talking about Star Trek, the movies itself, and obviously the TV shows, of course. What I wanted to ask you is if there's any properties you would like to see covered in the future by the series, what would that be? I mean, I've got one off the top of my head, but I'll let you go first.
Well, I think you could definitely cover stuff like My Little Pony. I think that's a really big brand for them to explore. Ninja Turtles is obviously the biggest brand that they haven't explored. Having worked with the guys that made He-Man with me who did Turtle Power, again, a 90-minute documentary that looks at the entire brand, movies, comics, and toys. There's obviously a lot to talk about there. I don't know that their half-hour, 40-minute episode is going to do it justice, given that it's been around for 30, almost 40 years at this point. Thundercats would be an interesting one, but honestly, what I would love for them to do, instead of doing like Thundercats or Visionaries or Cops or GoBots, which they touched on in Transformers a little bit, I'd really like to see one of the oddball episodes. Like what are the misfit toys of the 80s that we grew up with? Those weird toys that are kind of in the corners of our mind that we maybe had one of that we played with as a kid, or we visited the kid down the street and they had this weird thing that we remembered. We never watched the show, but we bought the figure. That kind of stuff would be good. I mean, even the Ghostbusters action figure line is pretty vast for the cartoon series that was out there. So that would be interesting. But to see something like on the Silverhawks or, like I said, Visionaries or Cops, that would be really cool. What toy line would you like? Is it Mask?
No, I would say Hot Wheels.
Hot Wheels. I mean, Hot Wheels is a big one.
Nerf. I'd probably say Nerf as well.
I think with all these, though, that they seem to be doing, they definitely are focusing on the influence and the importance of the figure itself. Even with Lego, as much as they talk about the building bricks and the brick system, the documentary takes that left turn when they introduce the Lego figure and how that changes the company in 1978. So all the properties that they showcase in the Toys That Made Us seem to be revolving around that figure kind of persona. So I'm not sure if Nerf would work or if Hot Wheels would work in that same capacity. But as far as toy brands, you don't get a bigger car brand than Hot Wheels unless you're talking Matchbox, which of course Mattel bought as well and amalgamated together. So even hearing kind of how that story came to be would be great.
I would love to hear how they were like the Sega Nintendo at one time, and adversarial rivals and Coke Pepsi, that type of deal where Matchbox and also Hot Wheels were hot and heavy contested at one point in time. And like you said, eventually it kind of bought itself out, but at least at one point in time it was very hot and heavy where you were Hot Wheels was still the clear number one, but at some point in time you were at school going, okay, hey, are you a Hot Wheels guy or are you a Matchbox guy? And sometimes you wanted to go ahead and get a couple cars from each because you liked the designs and whatnot, but you were afraid to go ahead and get mixed Matchbox with your Hot Wheels and so on because you were worried about what other kids would say about having the wrong type of vehicle, or wrong type of car, I should say. You're on mute.
And similarly, like I said, with the 80s cast off, you could do the 60s cast off. You could do the Frisbee, the Etch-a-Sketch, the Hula Hoop, the Pet Rock, and see like the evolution of those toys and how they impact the industry. If they want to go beyond the figure and the action type of that one package thing, then of course you do have to loop in Nintendo and Sega and the impact of the NES, the impact of the Atari, the Game Boy. There are a lot of toys that made us. And I'm not sure how far back they want to go, if they really just want to focus on the 80s or toys that were big in the 80s, which also seems to be the other through line here. Not just big toys, but things that were big in the 80s, because Barbie was big in the 80s, Hello Kitty was, Lego was, Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, Trek, found its footing there. So we'll see where the series goes after this. They haven't announced anything else going forward. It was always supposed to be an 8-part documentary series, as indicated by the theme song, and they've split it up into 2 seasons. If the ratings do well enough, I'm sure you can see more episodes of this. But at the same time, I feel like I'm kind of done with these. And even as a filmmaker, seeing the work that they put into both the Transformers and G.I. Joe episodes, 2 brands that I'm a big fan of, I don't have that itch to scratch about telling those stories anymore. That, and of course, I've spent a lot of time doing the He-Man documentary, so I feel like I'm kind of just done with a little bit of the pop culture toy scene on some level. Now, if we relaunch Galaxy of Hope and we get out there, maybe we'll investigate Star Wars toys a little bit more like they did on the first season of Toys That Made Us. But right now I'm good. And overall, I ended up liking season 2 probably more than season 1.
Fair enough. But it's a nice idea, but I think you can't just make it an 8-part episode, 8-episode type of event. There's so much to cover. And like you said, there's so many other entities and properties that are still big then and now in the toy scene that I believe should be covered and should given that same type of love.
I think part of the problem, though, and we were talking about this when we made Power of Grayskull, and because those guys had done Turtle Power and I had delved into Nintendo a bit, some of the same storylines just keep coming up regardless of brand. So you keep telling the same story after a while. Here's how it started. Here's the big break. Here's the evolution. Here's the kind of reboot. And here's how it goes on from there. So because I watched season 2 back to back to back pretty much, you see the same iterations and stories, so I don't feel like I'm getting anything new out of each episode. So to do another 10 episodes that include some of the things that we've talked about earlier, I don't know that it's going to be a big entry or thing to discuss, because it's going to feel very much the same. It's a lot like Behind the Music, right? Great series, awesome. You always want to tune into those landmark bands. But once you start watching a lot of them, even the lesser known bands or artists that you don't know, you realize how similar every single episode is. And you can pin down the turning points and the structures. And then it starts to feel like Funko Pops. You've just had enough, and it's time to put the thing away, right? So I'm not sure that they need to do more. Of course, there are more toys that need to be in the Toy Hall of Fame. And if this series is kind of like picking and choosing which those toys should be celebrated in a half-hour to 40-minute format, sure, go for it. Will I watch more? Definitely. But I don't know that I'm getting a whole bunch more. And by the time I watched the Hello Kitty episode, I was definitely feeling burnt out.
I can imagine so. But, if it comes back in maybe a year and a half with some new episodes, by then you may be able to be re-energized to where you might want to watch it again.
You never know.
You never know.
So I've got time for one more topic before I gotta go. Do we want to talk Happy Time Murders, a trailer face off with a bunch of trailers that dropped today? Do we want to talk branding and video games expansion, or do we want to talk Star Wars actors and the crap they deal with?
I think because of the fact we dealt with the Happy Time murders, I don't want to talk about that as a priority, but I think we should, in fact, because of the fact that the story itself has changed in a way that I didn't even think it would, at least so quickly.
Well, for those of you that don't know, the Happy Time Murders is that adult puppet comedy, almost in the vein of Ted, that's directed by Brian Henson and features Melissa McCarthy in a buddy cop film who teams up with a detective to figure out why stars of a 1980s puppet children's show are being murdered across town. It is raunchy, it is very R-rated. Take it or leave it, it is adult humor. Their campaign came out saying, "No Sesame, all street," just to prove how hard-edged they are. And apparently, the owners of Sesame Street took offense to this and sued them for trademark infringement and brand infringement, saying that people are going to confuse this with the Sesame Street brand. We are not, upset by the kind of humor. You're entitled to whatever kind of humor you want, but because you're mentioning no street, all Sesame, there seems to be some sort of tether or a liaison to the Sesame Street brand, and we don't want it. We've asked you many times to change your marketing, and you haven't, so we're suing you. The case went before courts, and the judge said, no, the tagline actually only reaffirms that this is not Sesame Street and has nothing to do with it, and basically awarded the case in favor of the people behind Happy Time Murders, who, according to their press release, also had a puppet lawyer on their side saying that it was ridiculous. So we knew it was going to make waves. It ruffled a lot of feathers with a lot of people. We had talked about it on the PCC before in the Crossfire. And whether it's going to be good press or bad press, it ends up being press, and the Happy Time Murders will, of course, move forward. It was never going to probably delay the release, just change the marketing and maybe a fine or something like that. But it's going forward. What are your thoughts on how that all transpired?
Well, I was hoping, or I was thinking that it was actually going to go ahead and do something more and actually possibly shelve the film, and it was going to be one of those, I guess, one of those lost entities that people will be scrounging for years to come, as far as to find out, oh, I want to check out that movie, but it never got released, so how can we find a copy of it, whatnot, because it seemed like it was setting itself up to be something that was going to be one of those failed projects that would never come to light, that would be something that would be hard to find and whatnot. But you know what? Yeah, credit to them. Credit to, I guess, the judicial system. Even though a lot of people like yourself are not really interested in the project, it is something that I guess is disassociating itself while at the same time kind of associating itself with the Sesame Street brand by mentioning it, but clearly saying it's trying not to be, in quotations, of course. So, I did watch the Happy Time Murders trailer again. It doesn't really look that great upon second viewing. In fact, it didn't really, I just thought it was okay at first, but it just really doesn't look like it's something that's going to go and appear on the actual theaters out there and actually be something that a lot of people are going to clamor for. It might be actually something that's best served as something a streaming entity should pick up, i.e. the Cloverfield project and basically the Cloverfield paradox, and instead of actually going to theaters where it will tank, actually going on to a streaming service and maybe finding an audience that just wants to tune into anything.
Well, I definitely think that going theatrical with it is a big mistake. I think it's only going to hurt other puppet potential projects or potential puppet projects from having any comparable sales at the box office to go forward. We saw that Dark Crystal is getting turned into a series, and that'll be on Netflix. So I would, again, assume that straight to streaming or VOD or something would be better.
This is an STX film, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so they're not even a large entity and a large player in the game. So the way, when it finally comes to distribution of the actual film, it's not going to be distributed heavily and probably will not even be able to go to maybe 2,000 theaters, because most of their releases are or at best 2,000 theaters.
To be honest, I don't know their distribution reach or arm, but I just think it's a lot of money to spend to put a film like this in the theater that is questionable to begin with, and then is for an R-rated audience, which typically only does well for horror films and comedies. And because this comedy is even a niche kind of comedy, because it's puppet related, I think you're really losing out on some potential revenue there. And even if you want to say that the theatrical run is marketing dollars to bring awareness for when it does hit a streaming service and up the value of whatever streaming deal there is there, I still think dollars to dollars, you'll be ahead of the game not releasing it theatrically. I think you can get more buzz and more marketing just getting it out there on its own.
I agree. Agree 100%. I think it's the wisest decision to go ahead and just put it there, because if it fails in theaters, it's not a guarantee that, oh, maybe I'll catch it in the home video. Maybe a lot of people will just have that stain of actually, it being a failed movie, and just pass it on by.
I agree.
All right, my friend. Since we're going to be going ahead and cutting it short a little bit today, if you have questions for Rob McCallum right here in the Cosmic Crossfire, just let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com, or also as well, Rob McCallum Films on Facebook, Rob McCallum Films, at Rob McZob on Twitter, and so many other different outlets. Rob, before we head on out, is there any update on all the great projects that you're doing and you're up to? Because I know you got the horror thing, which you really can't talk about, but you've got so many other great projects out there, including we've got Box Art, the documentary, Power of Grayskull. You've got the Kitty documentary that you just finished.
There's tons to talk about, Gerald. That's for sure. Power of Grayskull is coming out very soon. We just had phone calls with another potentially interested distributor, and I'm tripping over my words because I don't know what I'm allowed to say. We had to break away from one, and now we're working with somebody new, and it's changing our plans kind of at the last minute. But things are going forward, and they're coming really fast. And no matter what we decide to do, it's going to be out very, very soon. So if you're a backer of Power of Grayskull, it's coming. Trust me. The Kitty doc was released on March 30th, and we're looking to release the concert film that was that played out the night of the premiere of the documentary here in London, Ontario. We filmed it up. That featured several lineups of the bands. We hope to release that concert documentary very soon as well. Box Art, we've got all 6 episodes kind of structured, and now we're just filling in some of the gaps. We've got to do a little bit of filming with the host segments and bumpers that feature yours truly on camera. So that's got to happen. There's just a lot going on. I want to thank everybody who's been watching Missing Mom, of course. We did a really great Q&A last time we talked, Gerald, with Jordan Morris on the phone, if you will, and we've got a lot of response from that too. So it's all coming up aces. And as far as the horror project, there's 2. One that I've been hired to write that we're aiming to produce ourselves, and there's another project that I'm probably just going to pen. But when you guys hear those stories and how they revolve, you won't be surprised. You're going to be like, oh, well, obviously this is why he's writing that. It makes total sense, and you're going to see how all the dots connect. And I think with the one that we're going to produce ourselves, you're going to say, well, that's going to be great because of these 3 other things that you know about.
Well, that's a lot of great news coming down the pike for Rob McCallum and Rob McCallum Films. One last thing I got to ask you. One thing you're looking forward to hopefully being announced or being looked at more at E3 next week?
E3.
Oh, hush. You know what E3 is. You went to it last year.
It was 2 years ago at this point. Can you believe
2 years ago. That's right. To film Box Art, of course.
Yeah, I filmed Box Art at E3 in 2016. We cut an entire episode from our time there, which was really great to see. I would really like to see, more about the Atari console, more about the new Intellivision console that's been announced. And will Sega ever get back into the console race? I just want to hear about all the new stuff that's coming out, the new IP, not the sequels that people are hoping for, not the remasters, not the reboots. Show me something that trends to my neck of the woods. As much as I've been steeped in gaming in the last few years, I've definitely been a little bit removed as I've come back to Canada and focused on films and now screenwriting again. So I feel like I'm a little out of touch. So announce something big enough that even I hear about it as I'm off doing my own little thing in my little basement of the world. So that's what I'm hoping for. Some big, major new IP announcement that just looks incredible, and I want to talk about it on the Cosmic Crossfire.
That's awesome. But there is a mini Genesis console on the way.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count.
That doesn't count? Okay.
Doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Okay.
There's been mini Genesis for the last 10 years.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I know in retail form, you can get it pretty much at any retail store already. So yes, yes. Okay. Okay. All right. That does it for the Cosmic Crossfire. Once again, Rob, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And of course, a part of the pop culture cosmos.